avoid their images. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wang Dan. I'm a former student, survivor, veteran of the 1989 democracy movement. And I'm also the promoter of this permanent exhibition. I welcome you here today to participate with us, witness to this historical moment. In the spring of 1989, countless young Chinese took to street and raised their voice in hope of bringing democracy to China. At that time, there was a real possibility that China would embark on a path of civilized development and the country would become a responsible global power. However, the gunshot heard on June 4th shattered the dream of Chinese people. And since then, although the country has grown in strength, the personal freedom of Chinese people has weakened. The event of 1989 had an impact not only on China, but on the entire world. Today, as we began to wake up to the threat to human civilization posed by Xi Jinping regime, we should remember back to 1989. That stirring democracy movement and the brutal suppression that followed represent the true origins of the current global crisis. The 1989 event in China connect not only with the past, but also today and the future. In thinking back to this event, we should commemorate those who sacrificed with their life and remember the democratic dream of the Chinese people at that time. But we should also remember the true face of Chinese Communist Party. And that is why we wish to establish this memorial exhibition. On behalf of the Memorial Exhibition Preparatory Committee, I would like to express my gratitude to all those who have supported the establishment of this exhibit, and to all those volunteers who have contributed to the design and set up of both the Washington, D.C. June 4th special exhibit and the June 4th Memorial exhibit here. Further, on behalf of the Memorial Exhibit Preparatory Committee, I announce today that committee has already decided, appointed Mr. Yu Dahai as the director of the exhibition and the future museum. And we fully entrust the future development of the Memorial Museum to Director Yu Dahai and his team. It's with overwhelming excitement that now I officially declare the opening of the world's only June 4th Memorial Permanent Exhibition in New York on this day, on June 3rd, 2023. Now I will hand over the microphone to Museum Director Yu Dahai, who will present over the opening ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wang Dan, for your kind words. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the opening of the June 4th Memorial exhibit here in New York. I want to make clear before I say anything else that Wang Dan is the founder and board chairman of the Zhongforce Memorial Association. He is the one who proposed the founding of a Zhongforce Museum in New York back in 2021. 各位朋友、各位来宾，欢迎大家来参加六四纪念馆的开幕仪式。下面呢，我先自己讲几句话，然后就请贵宾发言。首先呢，想就3件事向各位表示抱歉。第一，因为今天有很多不懂中文的记者和来宾，所以呢，下面我就用英文讲了。大多数的发言者呢，也会用英文发言。第二呢，今天很热，但是我们这个空调呢，虽然开到最大，因为人很多呀，所以就好像还是有点热吧。大家我们希望这个开幕式不是很长，请大家坚持一下。第3点呢，就是今天来的人，我们想象的多出了很多，尤其是记者就有40-50位。那么我们优先把这个好的位置呢，都让给记者了，所以很多朋友呢，今天没有合适的座位所以这3件事情呢，要向大家表示歉意。So all right, I'm switching back to English. Before I introduce our speakers today, I just want to say 2 things. First, we need your help. Many of us worked very hard on this exhibit for over a year, and we all worked as unpaid volunteers. We don't mind not being paid, but we feel the work itself is a sufficient reward. Still, to keep the project going, we will need a paid staff very soon. So anyone who's interested in helping us out, please do so, and do so urgently. You can be assured that your support will be used effectively and for a noble cause. And you can find a lot of information on our finances at our website, which is 64ma.org. The second thing I want to say is about what we are. As you must have noticed, we call what you see here today as an exhibit, not a museum. This is because we have not satisfied all the requirements for operating a museum in the state of New York. We're getting there, but as of now, we are not a full-fledged museum. In another sense, though, this space is much more than a museum, any museum. We'd like to think of it as a space where we can mourn the young lives cut short by the tank and machine guns back in 1989. We also would like to think of this place as a symbol of defiance, as a beacon of hope, and as an embodiment of a dream, the dream of a free and a democratic China in our lifetime. Thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda today is the reading of a written message.
Sorry everyone, before we move on to the next session, there's some housekeeping rules to let everyone realize. So we have 2 bathrooms right over there. Walk all the way down to that room and it should be on your left. And then we have 2 emergency exits. One is in this room, you can see the exit sign. Another one is over that room right next to the restrooms. I hope we will never need to use them, but yeah, just some housekeeping rules to let everyone realize. 然后我们有一点需要交代的，就是说我们这里有一个那个卫生间，就在最里面那个房间的左手边，然后还有2个那个紧急出口，一个在这间房间里面，就在我们的左手边，还有一个就在那个卫生间的旁边，所以大家 如果有紧急需要的话，请大家用这个紧急出口，谢谢。
It's a very important announcement. I have so many people here. God forbid something happens, we need a way out, right? All right, the first item on our agenda today is the reading of a written message from the leader of the Tibetan people, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. I'm now asking Mr. Suchen Gyatso, the Chinese liaison officer of the Office of Tibet in Washington, to read the message.
尊敬的王丹先生，还有各位亲眼见证过六四残酷一幕的前辈们，以及所有的嘉宾，大家好。我在这里呢，代表尊者达赖喇嘛和藏人行政中央驻北美代表办事处，祝贺各位今天能在纽约人气最盛的地方呢开幕六四纪念馆。那么读尊者的贺词之前呢，我想简单的给大家说一下当时西藏的情况，因为对当时来讲的话，对于西藏到了一个很特别的一个时间，因为1987年、1988年的话，尊者达赖喇嘛是分别提出了5点和平计划和斯大拉斯堡建议，跟北京政府呢进行着一系列的严肃的谈判。那么尊者呢不顾一切，严厉的批评，谴责了北京政府。曾担任过尊者达赖喇嘛特别代表的罗居贾日先生，在他的回忆录里面讲到和写到了，他当时劝告尊者达赖喇嘛保持沉默，但是呢，尊者讲到，如果尊者保持沉默的话，以后就在道德上没有这个谈论自由和民主。那么接下来请允许我在英语里面读尊者的贺词。In 1989, the Chinese people held a peaceful demonstration to express their desire for freedom and democracy. Unfortunately, that popular movement was eventually brutally crushed. However, the courage and determination of the demonstrators served not only to inspire the international community, but also showed the Chinese people that the truly great China should be open. It would not only need to be economically well off, but would also need to honor individual and collective rights and freedom. The People's Republic of China today is a major power in the fast developing economy. Therefore, to maintain its stature among the community of nations, it is important for China to be an open, peaceful, and stable society. Doing so will gain the trust and respect of the world and will be able to play a critical leading role in the world affairs. As many people around the world continue to pay homage to those champions of freedom and democracy in China who led the 1989 movement, I am pleased to know that a memorial exhibit dedicated to June 4, 1989 Tiananmen Square movement is being established in New York. The exhibit will enforce the message that Chinese people have the same desire as others concerning the values that are foundation for dynamic, free, and just society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our first in-person speaker today is Mr. Wei Jingsheng. Mrs. Wei is the chairman of the Overseas Chinese Democracy Coalition. Ms. Wang Siping will translate for Mr. Wei.
今天来的年轻朋友很多啊，这是跟往年不太一样，很高兴。
A lot of young people here, so which is different than the previous years. So I'm very happy to be here.
这么多年了，纪念馆是大家心中的希望。 现在终于开始运营了，这是一个良好的开端。中国的民运事业将在艰难困苦中一步步踏踏实实地向前进。
For all those years, we always had hoped in our hearts to have a museum like this. Now it's finally started to operate, so this is a good start. And I am seeing the Chinese democracy activities will be move forward in solid steps in all those difficult situations.
34年了，很多人的热情逐渐减弱，美国的支持也在逐渐减弱。在这同时，国内的反抗情绪在迅速上升，党内的矛盾也在激烈对抗。
It has been 34 years. A lot of people's enthusiasm has been reduced gradually, and support from the United States has also been reduced. Meanwhile, the opposition within China has been rising rapidly, and the strong confrontation within the Chinese Communist Party has also been intensified.
美国社会和政界的反共情绪越来越强烈，与中共对抗的行动也在逐步升级。在这种不平衡和不对称的形势下，我们的工作力度必须加强，我们内部的团结必须加强。
Anti-Chinese communist mood within the United States, both within its society and the political circle, has getting stronger and stronger, and the activities against the communist regime has also going upwards. During this unbalanced and unsymmetrical situation, our working effort should be enforced. Our unity within ourselves should be enforced as well.
古语说：“兄弟齐心，其利断金。”因为面对中共这个狡猾的强敌，我们大家一荣俱荣，一损俱损，没有中间道路可以选择。
And we have been saying that we must be in unity even since the ancient time. And as we are facing this strong, cunning enemy of the Chinese Communist Party, we must realize that if we united, if we have glory together, we'll be enjoyed together. If we are losing one or each other, we are going to lose all together. There is no middle way to be chosen.
这些年，由于形势低迷，也由于生活所迫，许多人走上了两面吃的道路，在中共和反共立场之间玩起了左右逢源，其结果就是被共特玩弄于股掌之间，逐渐成为民运的叛徒。
In the past years, because the difficult situation as well as to be forced to make a living, many people has to take the way as to be pleasing the communists, meanwhile to be on even in a democratic base. And in this stand between poor communists and anti-communists, the result is it is being fooled by the communist spies and gradually become a traitor to the democracy movement.
早知今日何必当初，为了五斗米弯腰，丧失了自己的初衷，成为你的敌人的掌中玩物，值得吗？
If we know today why we have tried so hard in the past, just for a little living expense, we have given our ideal, become the fool inside the palm of our enemy. Does that worth it?
坚持我们的理想，有始有终，就是穷一些、难一些而已。比起那些为了人民的民主自由牺牲的先烈们，我们已经很幸运了。
We must keep our ideology. We must not only have beginning but also have the end. Even we were poor and we do not have much money, and with all the difficulties, we are still very fortunate to compare ourselves to the martyrs of those people who sacrificed their lives for democracy and human rights.
在这个关键的时刻，放弃自己的人格，堕落成为两面吃的走狗，实在很不值得。
At this critical time, we should not give up our dignity. We should not become a running dog of the communist.
今天来的朋友们坚持到现在，正是大陆无数准备反抗的民众的榜样。 我们在国外的努力不是没有效果，而是非常重要。
Today, we have so many friends here. I have a consistent, insistent until now. We are those people are the examples for the people in mainland China to continue our struggle. And
不仅人民在悄悄地看着我们，而且中共也在拼命地破坏我们，这不就证明了我们的重要性吗？
this proves our effort outside China has its result, and it's also very important. Not only people are inside China watching us, but the Chinese communist regime also tried very hard to damage us. Doesn't that prove our importance?
五毛们一直在宣传一个说法，就是你们海外民运无用论。我们有些朋友把持不住，随波逐流，也丧失了信心，停止了参与民运的活动。
The Chinese communist agent always have propagated one kind of saying, claim the democracy overseas are useless. Some of our friends cannot continue, and they lose their confidence and stop their participation of democracy activities. I hope.
我希望在这个敏感的日子里，大家能够想一想那些付出了生命或者其他代价的英雄们，比照一下我们现在的困难。在这种时刻，当了民运的逃兵，实在是一种在朋友、家人和后代面前的耻辱。
I hope during these sensitive days, we could all think of those heroes who lost their lives and paying as a prices in comparison to our current difficulties. At this time, we should not be running away from democracy. Otherwise, it's a shame to our friends and our families.
望大家不忘初心，付出我们最大的努力，直到共产党垮台，开始建立民主中国的那一天。
I hope all of us remember what we started with. We will try our best, and until the day there is democracy and human rights in China after the collapse of the communist regime.
谢谢大家，谢谢。特别得谢谢王丹和大海，他们这么多年的努力，终于搞成这个。
In particular, I want to thank to Wang Dan and David. You have tried so hard so many years, and you are finally successful to be presented here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wei. Mr. Winston Lord, former U.S. ambassador and one of the principal drafters of the famous Shanghai Communique of 1972, also sent us a written message. I will now ask one of the 1989 student leaders, Ms. Wang Shaohua, to read this message.
谢谢林大海，谢谢王丹，Thanks to David, thanks to Wang Dan. I was asked to read these two paragraphs as a message to the gathering from Ambassador Lord in his email to Wang Dan. The message nationwide peaceful protests in the spring of 1989 and the massacre that ensued were among the seminal global events in the past half-century. They were the harbingers of global advances for democracy and freedom, including the collapse of the Soviet Empire. We firmly believe that, despite the current grim landscape, one day the heroism of the Chinese people and the leaders like yourself will be held in China itself. The revision of the official verdict on the Tiananmen demonstrations will be a watershed for the emergence of a democratic China. That is why we are deeply gratified that, thanks to devoted efforts by you and your colleagues, the new June 4th Memorial Museum will be established in New York. It is a telling response to the sad reality that the Chinese Communist Party has snuffed out the museum. Indeed, all remembrances of massacre in Hong Kong, just as it has totally distorted the overall historical record of the past 75 years. It is crucial that the world recalls and the succeeding Chinese generations discover the heroism and the historical significance of the spring of 1989 in China. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tao. Our next speaker is Dr. Wang Juntao. Dr. Wang is the chairman of the National Committee of the Democratic Party of China.
各位朋友，34年前，当我们离开天安门广场的时候，我们对着世界，对着中国，对着我们死难的同胞，也对着暴政发誓，我们一定要把天安门广场夺回来。34年过去了，许多的同道离开了我们，方励之、刘宾彦、陈子明、刘晓波，还有许多的天安门母亲。更多的人离开了我们的行列，放弃了誓言。但是今天我们在这里不准备放弃，我们要坚守我们的誓言，一定要把天安门广场夺回来，不是为了我们自己，是为了正义，为了中国，为了我们死难的同胞，也是为了人类的未来。今天中共已经成了人类和平和民主最大的威胁。有人说，你们在这样一个简单寒酸的地方说这些话，那不是大话吗？但是在人类政治史上、人类文明史上，那些真正伟大的事业，那些最辉煌的事业，总是起自这样的一些简单的场合。只要在这里宣誓的人，他们内心是真诚的，他们在逆境中可以坚守自己的信念，他们就一定能够成功。我们一定要把天安门广场夺回来，这是今天我想在这里说的话。Friends, 34 years ago, when we left of Tiananmen Square, we promised to the world, to our dead comrades, to China, also to the terrorists, we would retake Tiananmen Square. 34 years passed. Many of our colleagues passed away. 方励之、刘宾彦、刘晓波、陈子明 and Tiananmen Mao. But we want to restate our promise. We will retake over Tiananmen Square. It's not for us. It's for justice, for China, for our dead comrades, for the China's future and the future of the human being. The Chinese Communist Party has become the largest threat to the world, to peace, to democracy. We have to retake over Tiananmen Square. It's my word here. I believe it's also the world sitting with us. Still keep our promise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juntao. Our next speaker is Professor Terry Lin. Professor Lin is an eminent China scholar and chancellorial chair for teaching across disciplines at the University of California, Riverside.
Thank you. Every year about this time, people ask me, why do you and all of those people like you continue to remember June 4th? That's long ago. Get over it. Look forward. The world has changed. Why do you remember? There is no one easy answer to that question. There are many, many questions, and all of them added together don't really do it. Well, a couple of years ago, wrote a poem where I tried to write out some of the reasons that contribute to an answer to that. I'm going to read that poem today for you. We remember June 4th because Jiang Jielian was 17 years old at the time. He is still 17 years old. He will always be 17 years old. People who die do not add age. We remember June 4th because the lost souls that haunted Liu Xiaobo until he died will haunt us too until we do. We remember June 4th because the glint of bonfires on bayonets is something one does not forget, even if one did not see it personally. We remember June 4th because it taught us the essence of the nature of the Communist Party of China, when all of the clothes, every shred, falls away. No book, no film, no museum could be clearer. We remember June 4th because of the... No, I don't mind. Do you mind? We remember June 4th because of the ordinary workers who died then. We cannot remember most of their names because we do not know most of their names. We never did, but we remember them as people. And we remember that we never knew their names. We remember June 4th because the worst of China was there, but the best of China is there too. We remember June 4th because it was a massacre, not a crackdown, not an incident, not an event, a 事件, a 风波, not a counter-revolutionary riot, 反革命暴乱, not a faint memory, and not, as a child in China might think today, a blank. It was a massacre. We remember June 4th because, as Fang Yizhi noted with his characteristic wit, it is the only case he has heard of in which a nation invaded itself. We remember June 4th because Xi Jinping's fat smile is a mask. We remember June 4th because we remember June 4th because we want to know what the soldiers who did the killing remember. They were brainwashed on the outskirts of the city before they carried out their deadly orders. So they, too, were victims. We do not know what their thoughts were, but we remember that we want to know. We remember June 4th because Ding Zulin is still alive. She is 84 years old. When she goes out, plainclothes police follow to provide security. Security for her? No. Security for the state? That's right. A regime with 100 trillion yuan in GDP and 2 million soldiers needs protection from an 84-year-old lady. Protection from her ideas. That is worth remembering. We remember June 4th in order to support others who remember. We remember alone, but we remember together too. We remember June 4th because remembering it makes us better people. Remembering is in our personal interests. When politicians talk about interests, they usually mean material interests. But moral interests are just as important. No, more important than owning a yacht. We remember June 4th because it was an historic turning point for 1/5 of the world. A turning point in a frightening direction. We hope it won't be so much of a turning point as to throw the whole world into the ditch, but we don't know. We'll have to see. We remember June 4th because if we didn't remember it, how could it possibly have gotten into our heads any other way? Could we have possibly imagined it? No. We remember June 4th because there are people who dearly want us to remember. It comforts them to know that we remember. We remember June 4th because there are other people who desperately want us not to remember. They want us to forget because forgetting helps them to preserve their political power. How foul. We would oppose that power even if remembering massacres were the only way to do it. We remember June 4th in order to remind ourselves of the way the Chinese Communist Party lies to itself and to others. It says the Chinese people have long since made their correct judgment on the 1989 counter-revolutionary riot at Tiananmen Square. But each year, at June 4th, plainclothes police block people from entering the square. Why? If the Chinese people all believe what the government says that they believe, then why not let the masses into the square to denounce the counter-revolutionaries? The presence of the police shows that the regime does not believe its own lies. We remember June 4th because shocks to the human brain last a long time. We would not be able to forget even if we tried. I have copies of it if you like it later in English and in Chinese.
English copy.
Thank you very much, Professor Lin. I'm making a small adjustment to the agenda here. And our next speaker is Mr. Zhou Fengsuo. Mr. Zhou was a student leader in 1989 and is now Executive Director of Human Rights in China. I also want to note that many of the 1989 items here Hello.
哎，点亮。
外边小点声说话，提醒一下。
All right. I'll start anew. Our next speaker is Zhou Fengsuo. Mr. Zhou was a student leader in 1989 and is now Executive Director of Human Rights in China. Many of the 1989 items you see here today are the fruit of labor by Mr. Zhou over many years.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We are all here for this great historical moment. We are here because of the 9-year-old boy, Yu Peng, who died on Tiananmen Square 34 years ago, shot and killed. This is the only place that his life is remembered. Please check out, it's right there. We are here because there's this printer. That's the last thing I saw leaving Tiananmen Square 34 years ago. It was carried away at the moment of life and death. I was told, we need this to fight another day. Today is another day. We are still fighting. That printer was kept by the mother, and when she died, she passed it on to her daughter. And it has to be discussed to ship out of China. It is here. This is a special place because of the mother, the father, because anyone who cares about what happened. Not only because it's about past, because more importantly, it's about the future. It's about a free China that many people, millions of people gathered together. It's about a free China that many are willing to die for. Thank you. So if you want to know more, feel free to contact me. Behind every item, there's personal story, there's commitment, and it is an honor and a duty for us to build such a museum eventually. For now, it's still exhibition. For that purpose, we need to raise a lot of money. And today I bring with me a check. $20,000. That's enough to cover 2 months of rent. But we need a lot more, because what happened in Hong Kong, the museum was evicted many times. We need to own a place here in Manhattan. For that, we need tens of millions. We will get there if you help, please. Now I want to talk about something else. We don't have young people here, but there's one brave young person in Hong Kong. She was arrested yesterday for having this banner. So now she is charged with the intention of inciting subversion in Hong Kong. Her name is Annika Chang, Zheng Yuxuan. When she saw the news of the banner being displayed on Times Square and other places, she required one from me. Fully aware of the danger she is taking, she actually contacted news media to notify her action. She is now in prison. Because of young people like her, because of young people like her, the hope that ignited 34 years ago still lives. I take full responsibility for displaying this banner. I'm willing to go to Hong Kong to face any charge instead of her. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Before proceeding, I'd like to make 2 observations. One, this $20,000 check is in the name of Humanitarian China, co-founded by Mr. Zhou. We welcome your donation, and they don't have to be $20,000. Indeed, a $20 check will be welcomed as much as this one. The second observation I want to make is Mr. Zhou talked about the items. Because of today's crowd, we have moved some of the display cases out of their normal places in this space. For example, the room right next to us here has 2 display cases, and 2 smaller display cases are in the room all the way to the other end. So be sure not to miss them, even though they're placed not in very prominent spots. All right. Our next speaker is Mr. Xiang Xiaoqi. Mr. Xiang was a student leader in 1989 and is now an attorney.
Good morning, everyone. 24 years ago, I was a graduate student at law school at that time. And after the June 4th massacre, I escaped from Beijing to Hong Kong first. Then, with the help of the United States, I came to the United States. And then I was admitted to Columbia Law School. So 34 years ago, many young students in Beijing, in other cities in China, they lost their lives, they lost their families. So today we are here. We are speaking for them. We are standing here to tell the world, to tell the younger generation that we will never forget the June 4th massacre. We will never forget the democratic movement in China in 1989. We will never forgive the Chinese Communist regime. They killed our students, they killed our brothers and sisters, and we will never stop our fighting for democracy, for freedom in China. We know freedom is not free. No fights, no rights. So we will continue our dream, our fighting for the democracy in China. Today we set up this memorial exhibit for June 4th massacre to memorize those people, those young students, our schoolmates, our classmates. So 34 years passed. Some people left us. Some people do not insist this dream for democracy. I remember Aristotle once said, they say we don't have hope, but actually they don't have hope either. That is our hope. So we will continue our fighting for democracy in China. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xiaoqi. I'm going to make a small adjustment to the agenda again, and that is I'll play all the video messages at the end, so our next speaker is Mr. Hu Ping. Mr. Hu is the honorary chief editor of Beijing Spring magazine.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Although 34 years have passed, the CCP continues to dishonor the victim of June 4th and forbid people from holding public memorials in China. As a result, today it seems that the world has forgotten the violent image 34 years ago. Many young Chinese even don't know about what had happened 34 years ago. But we must know it is important remembering June 4th, since it is not only a terrible event in China's history, it is also continues to affect with us today. Under June 4th ended China's political reform, and under the hurricane effects of China's economic reform went to a wrong path. It is not a normal economic reform. It has turned to a feast for the Communist Party. The CCP uses the country's economic successes to strengthen their own power. And this is why the economic success in China did not make the CCP to become soft or become more tolerant, but instead it has become more forceful, brutal, and more authoritarian than before. As we all know, 30 years ago, the international communist campaign collapsed. The United States became the world's sole superpower. Liberal democracy achieved tremendous victory in the history of mankind. But in just over 30 years, we have witnessed a stunning reversal of the political landscape of the world. The rise of authoritarian China poses the most serious challenge to the values of liberal democracy. Today, fortunately, the international community is also more aware of the dangers posed by the CCP than before. And as Chinese, to set up a June 4th Memorial Museum at this time has significant meanings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wu Ping. Our next speaker is Mr. Piero Tozzi, Staff Director of the Congressional Executive Committee on China and representative of Congressman President.
Well, thank you, David, and really this is a wonderful service that you're doing to the community and also to the world. And it really is an honor to be here among these heroes of Chinese democracy, Wei Jingsheng, Wang Dan, Feng Zhoushua. A tremendous, tremendous honor. And on behalf of Chairman Chris Smith of the China Commission, I would like to extend my greetings. And I also have here Matt Squarey, my colleague, who represents Senator Jeff Merkley. Matt and Jen Salin, who's a senior researcher at the China Commission. All of us extend our greetings. This China Commission, the CECC, chronicles China's human rights records, and our annual reports are a chronicle of accountability for the future. We hold hearings like the one we did last month on the erosion of rule of law in Hong Kong, and our chairs and congressional commissioners introduce legislation like the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which can influence the conduct of American companies so that they're encouraged not to subsidize the oppression of the Chinese Communist Party. And importantly, just as you are doing at today's memorial here and the exhibits that you're showing the world, we preserve memory. We do not forget those brave human rights defenders who are in prison. Indeed, Chairman Smith intends to introduce a bill shortly that will call upon our State Department to raise the cases of heroes like Gao Zhisheng, Ding Jiaxi, Peng Lifa, the bridge man, who serves as a bridge with Tank Man that was there on Tiananmen. But ultimately, there are limits to what we at the CECC, we at the US Congress, and we in the US government can do to promote freedom and democracy in China. That has to come from the Chinese people themselves, from you. Okay? I remember, and I'm sure some of you do too, back in the 1980s and the 1990s, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore said that the Asian tradition was not capable of sustaining democracy, that it had to be authoritarian. That's a claim that Xi Jinping today also makes. That claim, however, is categorically false. There has always been a democratic, or at least a proto-democratic, lineage in Chinese thought. Mencius, Mengzi, citing an even older source, reminds tyrants that heaven sees with the eyes of the people and hears with the ears of the people. And anyone who dictates contrary to the Tao, that law above the law, which runs in the hearts of every man, woman, and child, has lost the mandate to rule, has lost the Tianmin. That is what Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist tyrants fear. And that's why they fear you. They also fear the white paper protesters of last year. They purport to rule in the name of the people, yet they fear the people. They fear heaven, which sees with the eyes of the people. 在这里，我想用一点国语跟你们讲，我就应该说点普通话。1988年，我第一次去台湾，那个时候台湾还不是一个民主的国家，就刚废除戒严，但是我记得在这个总统府有那个大字，有说反共必胜。反共就是很重要的，但是不够。我们也应该说，民主必胜。我1989年的时候，我回到美国，我记得我看你们的天安门民主运动的真的英雄。我的心里，我们大家的心里，都充满了希望。We know what happened afterwards, okay? But it was not a failure, okay? Because what you do, what you Tiananmen heroes, what last year's white paper movement did, what the Democrats on Taiwan do, is expose the lie that China cannot be a democracy. And I just want to close with these words. 反共必胜，民主必胜。谢谢你们。
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhao. That the Chinese part of your speech is quite a treat, and we love it.
Sure.
Our next speaker is Mr. Scott Simi. Mr. Simi was a journalist in Beijing in 1989. I should add, he lives in Canada, so he's probably from the furthest part of the world to this gathering today. And he brought with him a very, very large banner. You can see there, it's 3 meters long.
Good morning. 你好，你们好，早上好。我说的不好，我知道，可是我真高兴来了。I spent my entire career as a journalist, and I've reported from many countries over the years. But I have never witnessed a story as big, as important, and as moving as what I saw in May and June of 1989. First, just a bit of background. In 1986, after graduating from journalism school, I applied for and received a job in Beijing. It was with China Central Television, helping them start up the new CCTV English service. I decided partway into my first year that I wanted to write a book about China. I was meeting so many incredible people, including people who had suffered during previous political campaigns. people who'd been brutalized during the Cultural Revolution or had suffered greatly during the 1958 anti-rightist campaign. That was the one where Mao Zedong had proudly proclaimed, "Let 100 flowers bloom, 100 schools of thought contend." In reality, that proclamation was a trap. By encouraging people to speak their free minds, Mao was able to identify and punish dissenters. What struck me about these people was that they had shown great resilience. They had overcome these horrific campaigns and were stronger for it. And so along with my co-author and the help of a CCTV colleague, we interviewed a series of artists, intellectuals, including Feng Lizhi, and other interesting people who had suffered during various campaigns. We wrapped up the last of those interviews late in 1988, and I returned to Canada with plans to write the book. In early 1989, I was working for the CBC at the National Newsroom in Toronto, and then Pu Yaofeng died. I watched in disbelief as the marches began, and watched in even greater disbelief as they were allowed to continue. I immediately went and purchased a ticket back to Beijing. And then, for every single day from the beginning of May until the middle of June, I reported for the CBC and other radio networks around the world. Day by day, the protests became bigger. Day by day, the confidence among Chinese that this might be a moment for progressive change grew. It was remarkable to witness during one incredible 24-hour period, there was a non-stop mass parade protest running down Chang'an Avenue. There had to be more than 1 million people, perhaps several million, taking part, peacefully, patriotically protesting. There was the goddess of democracy, built in secret and transported in 3 pieces and assembled directly across Chang'an from the portrait of Mao Zedong. And in fact, the art students created and sold some t-shirts to help finance the goddess of democracy. I bought this, I think for 7 yuan, and kept it all these years. I'm donating this to the museum here, along with some other objects. Better that it be seen by people than sit in my basement. Of course, beside that giant portrait of Mao Zedong that hangs outside the Forbidden City were the words Mao had uttered when founding the People's Republic of China in 1949. The Chinese people have stood up. They were doing so again, and the protests were spreading. This wasn't simply a student movement anymore. It had become a people's movement. Many of you here today will have witnessed the multiple times when the army tried to move into the city. The soldiers would stop, listen to people explain the movement, and then refuse to carry out their orders. People would bring them tea, copies of the People's Daily during that extraordinary period when it was actually telling the truth. Getting the news out after the declaration of martial law was very difficult. Although I could still use hotel phones to file my radio reports, foreign news outlets were denied access to satellite transmission. That meant we had no way to transmit our stories back to Canada. Remember, there were no smartphones then, and our stories were recorded on bulky videotapes. We came up with a workaround. I would get to the airport and carry a tape with our story on it, inside, usually hidden beneath my shirt. And then I'd look for people who were flying to Hong Kong. I'd explain the situation and ask if they would carry it there and then phone a number so someone else could pick it up and transmit it back to North America. People always said yes, taking a risk of their own to help get the truth out. There is much I could say about the night of June 3rd and 4th. I will tell you that the soldiers I saw carried carbon fiber rods that had large metal stars on the tops of them. The sole purpose would have been to pierce flesh and break bones. I will tell you that I witnessed flamethrowers being shot into the trees along Chang'an Avenue because the soldiers believed protesters might be hiding in them. And at about 1:30 in the morning, a column of soldiers had reached Tiananmen Square. They stood shoulder to shoulder with their guns raised. Some of them were firing. People did not believe that the People's Army could be firing on the people they were sworn to protect. They're not real bullets, they shouted, but they were. A transport bicycle carrying a person who'd been shot in the neck rolled past me. They weren't moving. And a few minutes later, I recorded this bit of audio. Hope this works. That last bullet, when I decided to leave the square, literally landed within a meter of my foot. And when I saw the person who had been shot in the neck being carried past me, I had a moment where I suddenly realized, did that person think a microsecond before they were hit by a bullet that they would be hit and likely dead? And I realized, no, of course, there's no warning. So at that point, I decided that I had to leave. I will never forget what happened that night. This event, these people must be remembered, which is why this facility is so important. And as the old saying, later adopted by Mao goes, seek truth from facts. We are surrounded in this facility by facts, important facts. And I believe these facts will help others see the truth for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schubert. That was a really precious audio. Hopefully we can present that in the museum in some fashion too. And I also want to thank Mr. Simi for donating the t-shirt. That banner you see, Mr. Simi is loaning to us. That we welcome too. So if any of you listening in person or on YouTube, and you have artifacts from 1989, just remember, you're welcome to donate those to us. You're also very welcome to loan those to us. We would appreciate that too. All right, so all we have left are 3 video messages. I'm going to play them now. The first video message is from Ambassador Andrew Brimberg. Ambassador Brimberg is the president of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation in Washington.
Communism Memorial Foundation. On behalf of VOC, let me congratulate Wang Gang, David Yu, and the entire June 4th Memorial Association for the opening of this permanent June 4th exhibit in New York City. Last year, VOC was honored to partner with the June 4th Memorial Association to bring this exhibit to the Victims of Communism Museum in Washington, D.C. It was the first temporary exhibition that we hosted at our museum for our grand opening in June of last year. Thousands of visitors saw these artifacts and gained an incredible new understanding of both the brutality of the Chinese Communist Party and the bravery of the Chinese people. As you will see, this is the most extensive exhibit ever displayed in the United States on the Chinese people's heroic struggle for democracy in 1989. And it is so important that this exhibit have a permanent home in the United States so that Americans can learn about what happened on that fateful day in June of 1989. Tiananmen means gates of the heavenly east. There on this day, 34 years ago, that those heavenly gates witnessed wholesale slaughter of countless of people, their own government. For the free world, 1989 is remembered as the year of miracles, when the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union began to crumble. But in China, it showed the brutal lengths the CCP was willing to go, slaughtering its own citizens to preserve its own power. What was the crime these brave Chinese citizens committed? Demanding that their government allow them freedoms we in the free world take for granted each day. A free press, government accountability, and genuine representation. We also commemorate those who suffered countless acts of violence carried out across China that day, in places where no journalists there to record and bring to light these atrocities committed in the name of communism. Today, 34 years later, we are still living in the aftermath of that fateful night. While the Chinese Communist Party will censor any mention of its crimes and continue to oppress its own citizens, we will continue to speak for all the victims and commemorate this appalling tragedy today. It is fitting that today, on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, the permanent home for this incredibly important exhibition is opened. Congratulations and thank you again to the June 4th Memorial Association for their tremendous work in putting this together. We look forward to hosting you all at the Victims of Communism Museum soon.
Well, thank you to Ambassador Bradford. The next video message is from Mr. Wu Kai-xi. Mr. Wu Kai-xi was a student leader in 1989 and is now the General Secretary of the Taiwan Parliamentarian Human Rights Commission. Sorry. Lost my way of it.
各位好朋友，在今天这样一个特别的日子，让我问候大家。特别感谢王丹，尤其是王丹大海，我们很多这个共同促进成立这个6·4纪念馆的好朋友们，让你们感谢你们的努力，让我有这样今天有这样一个机会来跟大家讲几句话。34年是个非常是一个人生的差不多一半的时间吧，可能那我们的头发胡子现在都已经斑白，却仍然在纪念着这样一个30多年前的这样的一个日子，在纪念这个日子之中，很多逝去的年轻的生命，他们的青春年华在那一天戛然而止。但我们除了要纪念他们，纪念那些早逝去的年轻的生命之外，我们还要纪念他们的梦想，我们还要纪念我们自己的青春年华，更要提醒这是一个在纪念6·4的时候提醒我们自己，这是一个未尽的事业，这是一个我们仍然还需努力完成的这样的一个梦想。甚至我觉得到了今天，在2023年的这样的一个时刻，在6·4 34周年的时候，在今天的这样的一个国际形势之下，我们也许应该慎重的反思，慎重的思考的是，我们应该继续我们当初开始的这个事业。也许已经到了战略反攻的时候了，就像乌克兰的战争，我们在眼睁睁看着这个事它改变了全世界，不光是激发了人们的对于反抗暴政的坚定的决心，同时也让世界意识到了自己长期以来的绥靖政策给人类带来的各种灾难，而也这样的一种激发之下呢，这样的一种鼓舞之下呢，世界也在改变，也在形成一个新的格局，一个新的对抗。那么当年我们在北京街头，在天安门的这种勇敢的对抗，本来也曾经激励了世界，也许在那个时候这个世界没有能做出一个正确的抉择，在今天这样的一个抉择正在形成的时候，我们应该考虑的是，不仅是纪念我们当年的青春，我们还要更加提 So I would like to remind everybody we are commemorating not just the loss of their lives, but also an unfinished business. And I think their life should inspire us to come together, join our forces, and continue and finish the unfinished business. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wurtaishi. Our next video message comes from Professor Andrew Nathan. Professor Nathan is an eminent scholar and class of 1919 chair of political science at Columbia University.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today, but UDAHI gave me permission to send in a short video to congratulate you. We have all met young people from China who've never heard of June 4th. They don't know what happened in April, May, and June of 1989 and how that affected China in the years after 1989. But we know that this event was one of the most important events in China or in the whole world in the 20th century. It was very important for us to remember it and to keep analyzing and understanding what happened then and what it means. So I want to congratulate UDAHI, Joe Bonta, and others who worked on this exhibition for the hard work that you've done, collecting the materials that are so hard to get and laying them out in such an informative and really good-looking way in this exhibition. I've seen photographs of the exhibition. It's very, very impressive. This exhibition is proof that the impulse for democracy does not die in China, even though the regime works very hard to repress it. And I don't mean Western-style democracy and like the U.S. Congress and the Supreme Court and things like that, but the most basic desire of Chinese citizens and ordinary Chinese people for the right to think independently, for the right to speak, to write, to protect their property, to choose their own way of life, and in the case of this exhibition, for their right to know things that are very important to the history of their country. Chinese people are not allowed to know what happened, to know the truth. On this subject, as for so many others, for the time being, the work has to be done outside of China, and you guys are doing it. But we believe that by putting on this exhibition, we're holding up the memory of June 4th. We're making knowledge available to Chinese people who come to New York and who may, we hope, visit the exhibition. And we hope there will be many visitors from China. And that as things develop in China, things develop here outside of China, that eventually the right to know one's own history is going to be promoted in China. So congratulations to you again for this exhibition, and I wish you the very best and every success going forward with promoting it to everybody who wants to come in and have a look at it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Nathan. The final item on our agenda today is the singing of women's history by all the 1989 students here today. You can find the lyrics, English and Chinese, on the back of the program. If you know the song, you're welcome to join in. Reverend Zhang Buli will direct the performance. Please.
Everybody, gentlemen, will come here.
徐峰，徐峰。沈彤。
过来了，过来了。Come here.
徐峰，沈彤，都被杀。
郑旭光，沈彤。
沈彤。
王超华。
Well, our former student in Tiananmen Square at that time. 李恒清，恒清，恒清，李恒清 ，come here. And we was Tiananmen Square when we have political protest in 1989. This song we already sing when we march or we have hunger strike. So we will today after 3-4 years.
Music.
Music.
这个歌词。
蒙上眼睛，有一位看不见；捂上耳朵，就以为听不到。而真理在心中，创痛在胸口。还要忍多久？还要沉默多久？如果热水可以洗去尘埃，如果热血可以换来自由，让明天能记得今天的午后。让世界都看到历史的伤口。
再一遍，
再来一遍。
蒙上眼睛，就以为看不见。捂上耳朵，就以为听不到，而真理在心中，伤痛在胸口，还要忍多久？还要沉默多久？如果热泪可以洗去尘埃，如果换来自由，让明天能记得今天的午后，让世界都看到历史的伤口。Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now.
A huge volley of shots just as I left the front line caused panic.
Thank you.
The young man in front of me fell dead.
Okay, opening ceremony will stop here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
太开心了，
对，漂亮。哇，这玩意儿很重啊。OK， 哇，撑住了。
哇！等一下，